Hi everyone, welcome to Zawaras. In this video, we are going to build this weather API project. The project is listed on roadmap.sh website. I will put the link in the description. Let's go through the requirements of the project. So this video is divided into parts. In the first part, we will go over the requirements of the video. In the second part, we will build one springboot application which will return dummy data for weather forecast for a given city. In the next part, we will actually make an API call to some external weather API service and then return that data. And in the next part, we will implement the caching in our application so that we don't hit external weather service again and again for the same city. And we will cache the result for a given city for a given time. So let's start. So we need to build a weather API that fetches and returns weather data. In this project, instead of relying on our own weather data, we will build a weather API that fetches and returns weather data from a third-party API. Okay, so we will fetch the data from any third-party API and we will return that data to the visitor of our service. That means whoever is trying to use our API, we will return the data from third-party API. And this project will help us understand how to work with third-party API, caching, and environment variables. So in the environment variables, we will define few things like the credentials or API key to interact with the third-party service and the configuration to connect to the caching server and also some other variables if we want. As for the actual weather API to use, you can use your favorite one. As a suggestion, here is the link. So they have mentioned one weather service which we can use if we want, and we will use that one only. And it is called Visual Crossing. So this is the website. So we will use this service as a third-party service for weather API. Regarding the in-memory cache, a pretty common recommendation is to use redis. So we will use redis. So for in-memory cache, we can use something like hash map as well if we want, where key will be the name of the city and the value will be the weather forecast for that city. And we can store the duration as well. And whenever we want to fetch the result or whenever we want to fetch weather forecast for the city, first we can look up in the hash map. If it is not present there, then we can make API call to external service. But that won't scale. First of all, it will take some memory. So whenever our server restarts, all the data will be gone, all the cached data will be gone. And also if we have multiple instances of our weather API service, then they won't be able to share the same cache. So that's why we use some external cache service, and Redis is very common for that. And here are some tips which you can go over if you want. Now let's create a Spring Boot application which will return dummy weather forecast for given city. So let's go to start.spring.io and let me zoom it in so you can see it clearly. We will use Gradle as a build tool with Kotlin DSL. Java will be the language for our project. This is the Spring Boot version 3.4.2. Group will be dev.javarus. Let's say roadmap as such projects, and artifact can be, let's say, weather API. This is the name, description, package name. Packaging will be jar. We will use Java version 21. Let's add few dependency. For now, we will just add web dependency because we will just return dummy data. We won't interact with any third-party API in this part. We will add other dependencies whenever required. Click on generate. It has generated this zip file. I will go to terminal here. Now, first of all, I will move that file. So from it is in downloads, weather API.zip, and I will move it here. So it says okay, cd too many arguments. Okay, yeah, it should be MB. Command should be MB. Downloads, weather API.zip, and here. So if we see, these are the earlier projects, and then we have weather API.zip file here. Let's extract it. So unzip weather API, and let's remove the zip file. I will remove the zip file. Now we can see that we have weather API. Let's go inside weather API, and here we can see one gradle file. So let's first build it. Gradle build. So it will build the project. After that, I will open this project in an ID. So I will resume the recording once the build finishes. The build took 26 seconds. So now I can open this inside any ID, and I'm using IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition for that. I will open that here. I will trust the project. Let's set up project SDK and 21. I will increase the font size. So I will go to settings. Then, okay, obviously, I will go to editor, general font, select 20, click on apply. Yeah, that's better. Okay, let's run the application. I will run it. Okay, there is some error. Could not find a load main class weather API dot weather API application. I don't know. Like okay, I think the build is in progress now. Now I should be able to run it. Yeah, I will run it. Okay, so it is working. We can see that here. Now, but we don't have any endpoint. Let's create one endpoint right now. So let's create a new Java package. I will call it web, and inside web I will create a new class, and I will call it weather controller. Don't ask again, cancel. Oh, now I will mark it as REST controller. We won't provide any UI or anything for it. We will just provide REST API, and here let's say request mapping will be weather. Let's create a get mapping here, and we will just accept one city name. I will just call it city here. Public string get weather forecast, and path variable city string city. For now, let's return something forecast for city, and I will restart the application. I will go here, and okay, I don't know what's happening. Let's open another tab, and here curl localhost 8080 weather, then some city name. Let's say Jaipur, and we can see weather forecast for Jaipur, but this is not actual forecast. Now, in order to return forecast, we need to create few things. So first, let's look at this weather API. and see what is the structure of the response. I will sign in. Sign in. Now I have this weather API here. Just click on weather data and okay, how query. Okay, let's go to query builder. Close. Let's enter Jaipur here. Now this is the data. First, we can select city from here. Then we can select for how many days we want the forecast. Let's keep it 15 days. For unit, I will choose metric unit. That means temperature will be in degrees Celsius, and wind speed and these things will be kilometer per hour. After that, I will just go to API and copy it, and I will paste that here. So we just want to see the structure. This is the structure. Let me copy it and let's go to some JSON formatter. Let's paste that here. Okay, now here we can see the structure clearly. So first of all, we have query cost, which we don't want to display to the users. We have latitude, longitude, and resolved address. So I think these things are related to the city. So I will call them city info. Okay, so let's go here and I will create a new Java class. It will be record. First of all, I will call it city forecast. Now this city forecast has first information of the city. Let's say city info. Then it has forecast for okay. Then it has forecast for these days. So it has forecast for each days for the next 15 days, and it includes the current day as well. So let's say, and I will call for each day. Let's call it day forecast. Day forecast. So this will be collection of day forecast. Collection of day forecast, and let's call it days. So this is what we have for city forecast. Now we need to create city info. Let's create a record city info. Now city info will have few things. As we can see here, it has latitude, longitude, and resolved address. So double latitude, double longitude, and string resolved address. I will just call it address. I want to store this time zone and these things. I will just store longitude, and address. Now we have day forecast. So let's okay, we need to create this record. This will be record as well. Okay, let's create it. Create the day forecast. Now, if you look at day forecast, first of all, we have date time and date time info. So date time will be used to determine for which day this forecast belongs to. So now here it is a string, but we will return the actual local date. Local date, and let's call it date. After that, we have temp, max, min, and temp, and feels like, max, min, and this feels like. So if you see, uh, these are the similar structure where we have one maximum, minimum, and some temperature value. So I will create one record which will represent one of these, and that same record will be used to store both of these information, different instance of the same record. And let's call that temperature info. So temperature info, let's say temperature. Then again temperature info, TUREIN temperature info, and let's say feels like temperature info. We will create both of these. Now now we need to create a field for dew, humidity, and these things. Let's create for dew, humidity, wind speed, pressure, and visibility. Let's say double dew, double humidity, double wind speed, pressure, and visibility. After that we have these things. Okay, I don't want to include any like many things. Now let's include this sunrise and sunset epoch. So this will be the absolute time for sunrise and sunset. So local date time, sunrise, and local date time, sunset. After that we have conditions, description, and icon. So let's do that. String, condition, string, description, string, icon. Now let's create temperature info. So I will create a record temperature info, and this temperature info will contain three things. It will contain max, min, and actual temperature. So let's do that. Double max, double min, double temp. So this is temperature info. Now I think we have completed the record city forecast. So let's go to weather API application this controller and return dummy result. So here I will return a new dummy result, new city forecast. Now these needs two things. First city info. So let's new city info. This needs latitude. Let us say 77.23 something. Longitude, let's say 35.62, and address, let's say Jaipur, Rajasthan, India. After that we need collection of day forecasts. Let's say list dot of. For now let's just have one day forecast, new day forecast. This need few things. The first thing day forecast needs is, let's go here. Okay, local date. Let's create a local date. I will say local date dot now. Then it needs two temperature infos, one for the actual temp, then another one for feels temperature. New temperature info with max. Then let's say 40. Then it is, let's say 25, and let's say 30. Then again new temperature info. Let's say 42, and let's say 26, and it will be, let's say 35. After that, what do we need? Let's go to day forecast, dew, humidity, wind speed. So for that I will use this one. Dew 6.4, 39.1, 6.4, 39.1, dew humidity. Then wind speed we can say 15.5. And then we have pressure 1010.8, Then we have visibility 11.5. After that, we need visibility sunrise sunset. Let's do that. So sunrise, let's just say local date time dot now, and for sunset also we will use this one only. Now for conditions, let's use clear. Then we have description, clear conditions about the day. Then icon, let's say clear day. Okay, so I think this is completed. Did you miss anything? Okay, condition, description, and then icon. So what is the error? Required type is string. Okay, so let's say city forecast, and we are returning the city forecast. Save it, restart the service, and I will send this request again. Now we are getting this response here. This is the dummy response. Now let's actually create, or let's actually connect to third party weather service to return the actual forecast for the given city instead of sending the dummy response. I will go to weather this visualcrossing.com. So I will explain again how to get the URL in Visual Crossing. I will go to weather data. So you should already be logged in before doing any of these steps. Okay, let's go to query builder. This is where we can specify the fields which we want. Let's provide any city name. So this is the city name. Here I think you can specify for how many days you want the data or you want the forecast. I am specifying 15 days. Here I will select metric unit for the measurements. Okay, after that we need click on weather elements. Okay, so there are many things which you can customize. I don't want to do all those things. I'll just click on API. Now here in the output, I let's say I want daily and I don't want current. Okay, so this is HTTP and JSON. Let's copy it, and after that I will just paste it here just to make sure that this is what we need. HTTP printed. This is city information and these are the forecasts. Okay, so I think we are fine. So we can use this URL. So let me copy the URL and we can put the we can use that URL. So let me create one interface here which will be used to communicate with the external weather services. Let's create a new Java class. This will be interface actually. Let's call it weather service, and inside weather service we will have one method, and that will be public obviously because this is interface, and it will return city forecast get city forecast, and it will take city name. Now we will use this weather service. So let's go to weather controller, and here let's inject that weather service private final weather service, and we will do constructor parameter. So we are injecting it, and we can use the same thing. So let's do that. Return this dot weather service dot get city forecast for this city, and for now I will just comment it out. I won't delete it. So now we can just create, or we can implement this weather service, and that will be injected here by the Spring. For that, let's create a new package. and I will call it external. So we will put all the external services in this package. So the first service, sorry, we don't want to create it. Let's delete it. Refactor. Okay, here delete. In the external, let's create a new package, and it will be visual crossing. It should be underscore. And inside visual crossing, I will create a new Java class which will be visual crossing weather service, and this will implement the actual weather service. So we need to implement this method, and I will annotate it with service. And since it is external service, let's annotate with external, and we are returning null. Let's go here, and I will just cut it from here, and I will paste it here. Let's uncomment it. We are importing class. Okay. Now, in order to be sure that this function is being called in the condition or in the description, let's say by visual crossing. I will restart the server, send the request again. Now we can say by visual crossing here. That means this injecting of visual crossing weather service is working, but now we need to actually connect uh, to visual crossing weather service, the external service, and then return the data here. So let's do this here. I will say, first of all, I will create a logger here to log few informations. Private static final logger equal to logger factory dot get logger for this class. So now we have the logger. Now let's create that URL. Let's copy that URL and paste that here. So we can just copy this URL and we can paste that URL here. I can say private static final and URL template. This will be string obviously. Now here you can see we have few things. Visual crossing REST service at timeline Jaipur. First of all, we have city name. So here I will just write city name, and then we have unit group equal to metric include equal to day key. This is the API key, so I will replace it with API key here, and then content type is JSON. This is URL template. Now in order to send request, we need something called REST client. So we will do just that. Let's do that here. Private final REST client, REST client. Now in order to initialize REST client, I will do it in constructor public service client dot builder. Let's say this dot REST client will be builder dot build. Now we have built this REST client. Okay, this says that okay, it is never used, but it will be used now. So here we will use it. Now here let's create a method which will build the actual URL where we need to send the request. Let me go here, private string build URL, and we have city. So what we will do is from the URL, let's say URL template, I will replace that city variable with the city, and okay, yeah, it is city name. So I will replace city underscore name with city, And also I will replace that API key, this keyword with the actual API key. Now, where will we get the API key from? So let's do that here. I will say private string API key, and we can annotate it with value so that the value for API key will come from application.properties or environment variables. And we want it to be, let's say, visual crossing.api.key. We want a variable, we want an environment variable or property with this name. So let's create that. Go to resources, application.properties, and here I can say visual crossing, visual crossing API key. Now here we will get its value from environment variable, and I will call it visual crossing API key. Now obviously we need to create this environment variable. So in production, this will be in your actual environment variable or system properties. But here what we can do is we can create new file. I will create a new file and let's call it .env, and here let's put that variable. Sorry, not this one, this one. Copy it and paste it here, and its value will be actual API key. I will copy the API key here and paste it here. So this is the API key for visual crossing. Now let's close that file. Let's close the application.properties as well. So this is API key which we want to use. So let's replace it with API key. So we will return this URL, which is the actual URL. Now here let's log something, logger.info, and we can say fetching weather forecast for city for, let's do this, and I will say city. Now let's do this logger.debug, and we can say sending request to the URL. Now how will we get the URL? Let's do that here. URL will be build URL for the given city, and we will do that. Now you can see we are printing this in debug mode only because this will contain sensitive information, which is our API key, and we don't want that to be printed in the logs. So whenever we will run our application in debug mode, then this should get printed. But when we run our application in production, it won't be in debug mode, so only this log will be printed. Now let's send the request. This dot rest client dot get, this will be get request. We need to specify the URL here. Let's do retrieve, and then let's say body. So for now we just want to uh, we just want to deserialize the body into, let's say, object, or let's say map.class, and let's print it. We will send this request, we will return this city forecast, but we just want to print it out for now whether this is working or not. So let's assign it to a variable, okay, and let's print it. So here as well I will just say logger.info, and let's say got response, and let's say this body here. Let's say I want to print this also in debug mode only, because the response will be too large. We don't want to log that. Okay, let's restart the service. Okay, but if you just restart the service, it will fail, and the reason is we have not specified that we need to search environment variables from this .env file. So I will close it. I will go here, edit configuration, and here we need to define. We can provide the file where we are storing environment variables. So I will just go here, then I don't know where that is. I think go to projects, then roadmap.sh, weather API .env. Okay, apply. Okay, let's restart the service. Let's send this request again, and we are getting some internal server error. Let's see what is the error. Not enough variable values available to expand Visual Crossing API.key. Okay, why is that? Stop it. Let's run it from here. Again, we are getting this error. Not enough variable values available to expand Visual Crossing.api.key. So I don't know, like in Windows, I face this problem many times that it doesn't pick up environment variables from .env file, but after some time it picks them up. I will stop it. Let's run it in debug mode again, send the request. Now again I think, okay, we are getting the same error. Let's go here. Okay, this should be dollar, I guess. Then restart the service and send the request again. Okay, yeah, now it is working. So we were missing the dollar here. Now you can see we are fetching weather forecast for Jaipur. Okay, but I think, okay, there was some thing we did not configure it in debug. We did not run it in debug mode, so that's why we are getting this error. So let's just do it in for now and restart the service, and I will send the request again. We got the response here. We should be able to see the response. Okay, so fetching weather forecast for Jaipur, sending request to, okay, Jaipur. Okay, yeah, here this should be actual URL, not the city, but we got the response. So we got the query count, latitude, longitude, and everything. So now I will just delete it, delete this as well. Now we are getting the response, but we don't want to get the response as a map. Whatever response we are getting from the Visual Crossing API service, we want to store it in a dedicated class for it. So if I go here, see here, so we want to create a record which will store these fields, which will store all these fields. I mean, not all, like whatever we required, only those fields. Then for each day as well, it will store most of the fields which are needed. So let's do that. So here I will create a class inside source main Java, inside external Visual Crossing along with Visual Crossing weather service. Here only we will create that class because no one else care about what do we have in that class, because even this Visual Crossing weather service will return that city forecast only, which is defined at the top level of the project. So we don't care how Visual Crossing weather service is handling the response which is coming from the Visual Crossing server. We just care about what it returns back. So let's create a Java class here, and it will be record, and let's call it city weather forecast response. Now this will have few things. First of all, it will have latitude, then it will have longitude, then it will have resolved address, then it will have address. It is few more things like time zone offset, which you don't care about. We don't even care about this address, so we can remove this as well. Now after this, we will have a collection of, let's call it day forecast response, and let's call it days. Now we need to create this record, create record. Now this record will contain many fields. First of all, it will contain uh, the date field. So if you can see here, this date time field, but we will just call it date. So let's do that. We have this date field here, which is type string. But if we see in the response, we are receiving it as date time. So in order to deal with like different names of the same value, we can use something called JSON alias. So let's use that date time. So what we are telling is the response which we will receive will be in JSON, and in the JSON the field will have name date time, and we want to use the same field as a string variable. But in this record, in this day forecast response, the variable name should be date, not the date time. Now let's do the same thing for other fields as well. The next field is this date time epoch, which also, yeah, which we will need because using this only we will create the date. We can create it using this string as well, but the epoch is more suitable, so we can use this one, date time epoch. I will copy this one. Let's say JSON alias date time epoch, and it won't be string, it will be long. Let's say date epoch. Now after that we have temp max, which we want to rename to max temperature. Temp max, this is what it's called in the JSON, and say max temperature. This is what we want to call it in day forecast response. It should be temperature temperature. Then similar for min temp, temp min temperature. Then we have temp, which we want to call just temperature. After that we have feels like max, feels like max. Let's call it feels max temperature. Then we have feels like min. Let's call it feels min temperature. After that we have feels like, and let's call it feels like temperature. Now after that we have dew, then we have humidity, then we have dew, humidity, then we have wind speed. So here in the wind speed, this is small, we want to make it capital, so again we will use JSON alias, and let's call it wind speed. After that we have pressure, visibility, and then we have after visibility we have sunrise. So we will just use sunrise epoch, and sunrise epoch seems fine. This is the correct and right convention which we want to use for our Java record. So we'll just use long sunrise epoch and then long sunset epoch. Now we have, after that we will have conditions. This is string conditions, then description, and then we will have icon. So we have all these things. This is what we will get from the visual crossing weather service, but This is what we want to return uh, to like user of our application. So we will convert it to that. Let's go to city weather forecast response, and here let's create a method which will return from city weather forecast response to city forecast. Let's do that as a public city forecast to city forecast. It won't take anything, it will just, let's just return city forecast. Now city forecast has few things. First of all, city info. Let's say new city info. So let's give it latitude, longitude, and then result address. Because result address is what we want to use as address in the city info. And after that, we in the city forecast, what do we have? Now collection day forecast. So now we have another this collection day forecast response. So let's do this days dot stream dot map. We will have, let's say, day forecast response, and then to day forecast, and then to list. So these will be the days and we will return it. Now we need to create this method. Let's do that. Create method to day forecast, and its value will be day forecast. Now we need to convert this day forecast response to into day forecast. Let's do that. Let's say return day forecast. It needs few things. First of all, what does it need? Local date. Let's do that. Local date dot of epoch day, and epoch, this is daytime epoch. So I will date epoch, and then the UTC. What does it need? It needs, the second thing is copy epoch. I think that should work. Expected 13 ornaments but found one. Okay, so this is for day forecast. The second thing is temperature info. Let's new temperature info. The first is max, and this will be the actual max, min, and temperature. The max temperature, min temperature, and temperature. Another one will be new temperature info. Fields max, fields min, fields like. Now what do we have? Now we have dew humidity, wind speed, dew humidity, wind speed. And do we have after that? Dew humidity, wind speed, pressure visibility. Pressure visibility. After that, we need local daytime, sunrise and sunset. Let's say local daytime dot of epoch. It needs epoch seconds, which will be sunrise epoch, and then nano second 0 zone offset. Let's say zone offset dot UTC. Similarly, for sunset of epoch, second sunset epoch 0 and dot UTC. After that, what do we need? We need condition description and icon. Conditions description icon. Okay, so now what do we have here? Method call expected, insert new. Okay, yeah, here this will be new. Okay, so that is done. Now let's go to this visual crossing weather service again. Now here the body, instead of the map.class, it should be city weather forecast response dot class, and let's do that here. Response equal to this one, and let's return response dot to city forecast. There's something method invocation may produce null pointer exception. So let's not worry about that for now. We will handle the exception. Let's go here, send this request. Yeah, and we are getting the response back. That is fine. So it is, we can see that it is working. Now let's handle few of the errors. Now what if we provide invalid city name? For example, here I will just say ABCD or whatever. Then we get internal server error. And the reason is this. This is what we are getting: bad API request, invalid location parameter value. So this is what we are getting from the visual crossing service. So whenever we have 400 error, we want to return something else. So let's go here, create a new package for exceptions. I will create one exception which will be bad request. Let's create bad request exception. Let's say QUEST bad request, and rename file, and this will extend runtime exception. Now let's say public bad request exception string message, and we will just do this super message. And now we should be able to handle bad request exception. Let's do that. In the web, let's create a new controller advice, which will be, let's say, global or weather controller advice. Let's mark it as controller advice, and exception handler or bad request exception here dot class, obviously public handle bad, let's say public void handle request bad request exception. Now we need to return something here. Let's say instead of void, it will return response entity. Okay, let's return response entity dot bad request dot body. Inside body we can provide anything. Let's just say exception dot get localized message or whatever, and let's see what is the return type. Row is a parameterized class response entity. Let's say response entity string. Okay, let's save it, and now let's go here. Now here we need to handle 400 response. So for that, we have some methods available in REST client. We can use that. The one is on status. On status, first of all, we need to tell which status we are trying to handle. I will say HTTP. We have this one status, and we need to have a condition. I will say status equal to status dot. Okay, let's set true for now, and then here we will have a lambda expression which should be able to handle this response for the given request. Now here we have status predicate. So let's create a new status predicate. Let's see what is its on status. It first the first parameter is status predicate to match response with error handler, to match response with, and status predicate is predicate http status code. Okay, it will predicate http status code. Okay, let's create that. I will say new predicate http status code. Now here let's do this. I will say http status code dot is for xx client error. Now we can replace it with lambda, and this lambda as well can be replaced with method reference. So there is already this method is for access, so we can just use this method. Now what we are doing is whenever in the status we get for xx status, that means when it is a error of the client. This generally means bad request whenever we provide invalid values. Now we know that in our case we may provide invalid value only for the city name. So we will raise another error here. So let's just say throw new bad request exception, which we just defined, and we can just say invalid city name and city. Okay, that's what we can do. Let's restart the service, and if I go here, send request to ABCD, then we are getting this invalid city name ABCD. Let's say if I do this V, then we are getting 400A here. We can return more uh, we can return more of the things if we want here. So let's say dot body dot so here instead of just returning a string, we can return problem detail dot for status and detail. So it first needs status http status code dot sorry http status code. Where is it coming from? This is correct. Let me do this. Okay, so the first thing which we need to provide is http status code. http status code dot value of and 400. Let's just say this, and after this we need to provide one string. Now that string can be exception dot get localized message. We're getting some error. Response entity string. So let's say response entity problem detail. We restart it again. Send the request. Now we are getting this type about blank title bad request status 400 detail. This is instance, that means path. So now even if you don't use this b here, we will get this title status detail and all these things. So that's how we can handle bad request. Now let's try with valid city name as well. Let's say Bangalore here, and we are getting the weather forecast for Bangalore. In this part of the video, we are going to implement the caching service, so that whenever user enters a city code, then first we will check in the cache whether the data exists or not. If the data is not available in the cache or if it has expired, then we will send a request to external third party weather service, and then whatever response we get back, we will save that in the cache and we'll return that response back. Now we will use redis for that. So if we go to redis.io website and go to docs, so here you can see many ways to get started. So that should be something like container or something. So let's go to develop with redis and the quick start. Okay, so no worries, like I know that there is docker image, so we can go to docker hub and we can search for redis. So let's search for redis here. And this is the docker image which we can use to run redis inside a container, so that we don't need to set up redis locally on our computer. The docker, it will obviously run on local computer, but it will run in a container, so whenever we don't need it we can just delete that container, so it won't mess up with our system. So this is, so we can pull it, but instead of directly pulling the image, so we are going to use a docker compose file. So let me go here, and here I will create a docker compose file, new file, and let me call it docker compose. Now here I will say services. The first service is redis. We need to specify the name of the image. Let's say redis latest. So obviously you should specify some version here, not the latest, because we should be consistent with the version. So we can use any one of these. So let's use this. Let's use 7.412. So here I will use 7.412. Now we can use container name as well to give the name of the container which will start up. Otherwise, Docker will give it random name. So let's give it some container. I will say weather API redis. So this will be the name of the container whenever it is spins up. Now after container name, we need to export some ports. So the redis runs on some port which we need to see where does it run. Now one more thing. Yeah, let's see where, what is the port. Um, there, so I forgot the default port of Redis. Let's search for that. Redis default port 6379. So we need to expose port 6379. 6379. So this is the port of the host machine, and this is the port of the container. So what we are saying is the port 6379 of the container will be mapped to port 6379 of the host machine. That means whatever request we send to this 6379 port of the host machine, that will go to 6379 port of the Docker. So we can change it as well, but let's keep it default, which is standard. Let me see. Okay, we have Docker composer of YML file, and this is the file. Now let's say Docker compose up D. Okay, so it says error during connect. So I think Docker is not running. Let me run Docker desktop. Yeah, now it is running. I will run this command again. So it is pulling the Redis image from the Docker hub, and the next time it will just use the cached image. Now it is working. Let's say Docker ps. So we can see that the port mapping is here. This is the name of the container which you defined. If we did not specify the container name, it will specify some name for us. So it will use the name of the directory, then name of the service, and some numbering to give it a name, uh, which would also be some explainable. This is the container ID. This is the image name, and this is some command which is used to which it used to run the whatever service inside this container. Now let me go inside this container and see whether we can actually set something in the Redis and get some value out of it. So let's go to that. I will say docker exec it. Then either we can specify docker ID or we can specify docker name. Let's specify the docker name API Redis and then bash. So now we are inside docker this container Redis container. Now there we have Redis CLI, I guess. Sorry, Redis CLI. Okay. So we are connected to the Redis. Now here we can set the value or retrieve the value. Let me do set. So you can see the this auto completion or this help text as well. So we need to specify the key. Let's say key name and its value is, let's say, Javarus. So now this value Javarus with key name has been put inside Redis. Now let's try to fetch it again. I will say, is it get or something? Get and then key. Key is name. So you can see its value. Now I think you can increment, decrement values as well, which are stored in the Redis cache. But I will not go that deep. Okay, so now container is running. Now we want to connect to this container using our Spring Boot application. So for that, I will again go to start.spring.io, and we already added one dependency, which is web dependency. And okay, these are the rest of the things. Now I will add another dependency here, and that dependency is Spring Data Redis. Spring Data Redis. This one is Spring Data Redis access plus driver. Now one more thing you can do is you can add, I think, compose Docker compose support. What this will do is this will generate one Docker compose file. If I click on explore, then there is this composed YML. So using this as well, you can get an idea of like what configuration you need for Docker compose.yml file or compose.yml. So the name can be anything, Docker compose or compose. It doesn't matter. I mean, both are valid and both are picked up by Docker compose if you don't specify any file name. Now, but I won't use that, so I will remove it because we have already spin up our database. Let's click on explore. We won't download because we have already created the project. We will just copy this dependency, the new dependency. So this is the dependency which we need. Spring Boot starter data Redis. Let's copy it and I will put it in this build.gradlew file here, and then I will reload it. Once that is done, now let's see the documentation how to connect to Redis using Spring Boot. So we will just go to Spring Data Redis documentation. Let's go here, support, learn, and then reference docs. Redis support and connectivity, Redis repository, observability integration. There are many things. So let's just go to Redis getting started. Well, let's go to Redis. What do we see? So here you can read more about Redis. I will just go to getting started. And easy way to bootstrap setting up working environment is to create a Spring based project via Stardot or create a Spring project in Spring Tools. This is the example repository. You can see the example. So first of all, we need a connection factory in order to be able to connect to the Redis. And then using this connection factory, we create one Redis template. So this template is for one use case. So it accepts two things. First, this is the type of the key, which is string in this case, and then the type of the value, which is string as well in this case. And we need to set connection factor for this template, and we need to have some serializer as well. You can set default serializer for this template, or if you don't set it, then the serializer of the value will be used. Because in order to put something in the Redis, we need to serialize it, and whenever we read something, we need to deserialize it. So we need to add some default serializer here, and then you can set the value using this set method, and you can get the value using this get method. So while setting the value, you can set the timeout as well, or time to live basically. So if you say let's say TTL 10 seconds, then after 10 seconds that key and value will be deleted from the Redis cache. Yeah, that is the thing. Now if you go to drivers, okay, so you can read about this if you want. We have Redis connection factory and we have lettuce connection factory. So these are two variants which we can use, and yeah, lettuce is native based open source connector supported by Spring Data Redis through the org Spring Framework Data Redis connection lettuce package. And then there is another one, and this is lettuce. Okay, then there is another one, Redis. Redis is a community driven connector protocol by Spring Data Redis module through org Spring Framework Data Redis connection.jdis package. So you can use any one. We will use lettuce connector. So let's go here. Yeah. So we can create lettuce connection factory. So let me go here. So first of all, let's go to source main Java. Now we will put that caching configuration inside a new Java package, and I will call it cache. Now inside cache, let's create a new Java class. Let's call it cache configuration. Cache configuration, and let's make it configurable. Now inside here, I will create a bean, and its type will be this Redis connection factory, and I will just call it Redis connection factory. Now we can copy this code. I will copy it and I will paste it here. Let's import this class, import it, and import everything here. Now we will modify this code. So we are creating a latest client configuration. We are using SSL here, but since the Redis is on our localhost only, so the SSL won't work. So we will remove it. but for production we need to use SSL. So what we can do is we can create another Redis configuration factory, copy it, and I will paste it here. Now we cannot have obviously two beans. I will say prod here, and this bean will be created only if let's say profile, only if the production profile is active, production, and in this case this will be primary as well. So if the code is not running in production, in that case this bean won't be created and only this bean will be available. But if we are running the application in production, then this bean will be available. Also, this bean will also be available because it doesn't have any profile or anything, any annotation. But whenever we require a bean of type Redis connection factory, then this will be used because this is primary. Now we have the timeout for the command. So whenever we set or we get any value, then there is a timeout of 2 seconds, and then we have shutdown timeout of 0, and configure a shutdown. I also don't know what this means actually, so we can read the Redis documentation for that. Now here we are creating a latest connection factory, new Redis standalone configuration. We are giving host name and port. Now I don't want to hard code these here, so let's get them from the environment variables. So here let's create value, and the variable which we want is let's just say redis dot host, and there is private string host, then value redis dot port private, it will be int port. Now this can be replaced with the host, this can be replaced with port. Similarly, I will replace both of these things with host and port. And for this local Redis connection factory, I will remove use SSL because it won't work. And now we have Redis connection factory here. Let's create a weather service for cached data. So let's create a Java class. I will call cached weather service. Now this will also implement weather service, and let's have service annotation here, and I will mark it primary. Now we have one implementation of weather service, cached weather service, another implementation in this external, which is visual crossing weather service, and it is marked as external. Now whenever we need an bean of weather service, we want to prioritize this cached weather service, so we marked it as primary. But this weather service won't do anything itself. It will just delegate its work to let's say visual crossing weather service. That means any external or third party weather service. So we want to inject that here. So let's do that. Private final weather service, let's call it delegate, and I will add constructor parameter, and I also want the this qualifier, external qualifier, to be here. So what we are essentially telling is this cached weather service will delegate its responsibility to any external weather service, and it will cache its response. So it will use delegate whenever required whenever the response is not already in the cache. Now there are two things. Let's say we want to put the response in the cache, so we need to create a Redis template. So we can go here and in the get started we can create a Redis template like this. Let's do that. And here I will create another one private final Redis template. The type of the key will be string and the value will be let's say this city forecast, and I will just say Redis template. Now okay, now we need to initialize it in the constructor, but we need one more thing here, which is Redis template, Redis connection factory. Redis connection factory, and this will be provided by this cache configuration, this Redis connection factory. Now here let's do this dot Redis template will be new Redis template, and this dot Redis template dot set connection factory, Redis connection factory, and there are few more things which are set default serializer. So we don't want to set any default serializer. We just want to use whatever is specified in the city forecast. And let's do template after properties set. So let's do that. This dot Redis template dot after properties is set. Now there are two things. Let's say for a given city, we got the correct response from the service, we cached it, and then we return that result to the user. Now next time if the user sends a request for the same city, then we will be able to get the response from the cache. So that is fine. Now let's say the user entered an invalid city name. In this case we will call the external weather service, which will throw 400 bad request exception, and in that case we want to be able to store that in the cache because the type is city forecast only. So we want to store that in the cache and we will return the result. Now again if the user sends the request for the same city again, then again we will make external weather service. We don't want that. What we want is we need to store both the city forecast as well as the error in the Redis cache. So instead of storing the city forecast, we want to store some other information. Let's say cached city forecast. So let's create a new Java class here. It will be record cached city forecast, and it will take two things. One is the actual response, which is forecast, and the another one is exception. So that will be bad request exception, or let's say any runtime exception. Now we need to store this in the cache. So we want this to be serializable as well. So we can just implement serializable. If we don't do that, then we will get errors because we need a way to serialize it. So we just need to implement serializable, then the Java will automatically serialize and deserialize the this object. Let's go here again, and instead of city forecast, let's make it cached city forecast. This is Redis template. Now here let's get the response from the cache first. So let's do that. I will say Redis template dot ops for value dot get, and here we will have the key which is city name itself, and let's do this cached city forecast. Cached city forecast. Now the cached city forecast can be null if the key is not present in the Redis. I will do that if cached city forecast is null. Then we will do all sorts of things here. After that, we will say if cast city forecast dot exception is not null. In that case, we will throw cast city forecast dot exception. Otherwise, we will return cast city forecast dot forecast. And what does it say? Method invocation exception may produce null pointer exception. Yeah, because it says a city forecast may be null, but if it is null, then we will do something else here. Or here we can just say assert this to be not null. Yeah, then there was it says if statement has empty body. Okay, so we will now here we will use the delegate service to call it. So if it is null, so let's log something first. Let's create the logger private static final logger log equal to logger factory dot get logger for cached weather service dot class. Here since it is null, it is not present in the cache. That means it is a cache miss. So let's say log dot info cache miss for and then the city name. Now we will call the delegate. Let's do that. Let me do that inside a try catch because catch and we will just catch any runtime exception. Let's do that. Delegate dot get city forecast. We will give it the city name and we will assign it to city forecast. If there is any exception, then we will come here. Otherwise, here. So if there is no exception, then we will just update cast city forecast will be new cast city forecast. The the forecast will be the city forecast and the exception will be null. Otherwise, if we get any exception, then equal to new cast city forecast. Now the forecast will be null and the exception will be whatever we got here. Now we have cached city forecast, so we need to put it in a cache. So let me do this log dot info putting into cache and let's just give the city name. So cached forecast dot ops redis template dot ops for value dot set the key is city value is cached city forecast. The third thing which we want to specify is the duration. So for now let's say duration dot of seconds 10. So the entry in the cache will be valid for 10 seconds. After that it will be expired. Otherwise, if it is not null, it's not a cache miss, then we will just log that it is a cache hit. Cache hit for and then the city name. Then we are asserting that this is not null. Condition is always true. Okay, then we can just remove it. Now the condition is always true, so it looks like that this will work. Let me start the server again. So we have this .env file, and now I think we made some changes in cache configuration. So here you can see we need redis.host and redis.port. Let me go to application.properties and redis dot host and redis dot port. So the port of redis is I guess 6732. Let me go to docker compose.yml. So 6379. It is 6379. I will put that in .env. Let's say redis host equal to localhost and redis port equal to 6379. We have updated .env file, so we can use these environment variables in application.properties, and I will do that here. Redis host redis port, and that should be dollar here. And okay, so we have dollar here. I missed that in the like sometimes back. So now let's start the server. I will start the server here. Could not resolve placeholder redis.port in value reds. Okay, it should be redis redis. Let me start it again. It has started. Let's go here. Curl localhost 8080 weather Jaipur. It is taking some time, and then it has we got internal server exception. Let's see what the exception is. City forecast not serializable. Yeah, so it is not serializable. So we made this cast city forecast serializable, but we need to make this city forecast as well serializable. Let's go to city forecast and implement serializable. Now we need to make city info serializable as well. Implement serializable. We need to make temperature info serializable as well. Let's go to here now day forecast. This should also be serializable. This is using local date, which is already serializable. Temperature info, we made it serializable. Then we have okay. I think it should work now. Now if I go here, send a request for Jaipur. It is taking some time and we got the response. So you can see cache miss for Jaipur, fetching weather forecast for Jaipur and putting Jaipur into cache. Now let's send the request again. And this time there was a cache hit for Jaipur. Now let's send the request again. So now it was cache miss for Jaipur because 10 seconds may have been passed. Then we again fetch the response and then we put the response into cache. Now let's send request for something else. Let's say BCD. And we can see bad request status 400. This is the detail. And we put it inside cache as well. Let's send the request again. This time as well it was cache miss. Let's do it quickly. Now this time it was cache hit for ABCD. So we are able to put both error and successful response into cache. You can see we are getting cache hit, and now at this time we had cache miss. So we are able to implement cache. I want to improve few of the things. Let's go to cache configuration. Now here, sorry, not in the cache configuration, cache weather service. Here we have this duration of seconds. Now while developing the application, we may have this TTL of 10 seconds. But in production, we should have TTL of let's say 12 hours because the weather forecast for the next 15 days is unlikely to change in like let's say 10 12 hours or so. So you can configure that. So for that we want to have this config this TTL in the configuration, not hard coded in the code. So I want to specify the number of seconds in the configuration. So if it is for if let's say we want to specify TTL for 12 hours, then we can specify seconds, which will be 12 into 60 into 60. For that, let's create one variable here. I will say value. Sorry about that. And obviously we will read it from environment variable. So yeah, let's say weather cache duration seconds, weather cache duration seconds, and private int cache duration seconds. Now let's use the same here, cache duration seconds. Now we can specify this one. Let's go here. This is Redis configuration. Now we have something else like cache configuration, this, and its value also we will read from environment variable, weather cache duration seconds. Copy it and put it in .env. And let's say now this time we want it for 20 seconds. I'll save it. Let's stop it and run the application again. Now let's send request for ABCD. It took some time. We have cache hits. Still we are getting cache hits only. Yeah, now we have cache miss. So if you can see these cache hits, this was on, this is the timestamp 12:41:45, and we put it in 12:41:26. So from 26 to 45. So it is 20 seconds. So the cache entry is valid for 20 seconds in our cache server. So that is it for this video. We were able to fetch the weather forecast from external third-party weather service. We are able to put that response or exception in our cache server. We are using Redis for that, and we are able to respond with the cached response, or we are able to update the cache if the entry is not available in the cache. So with that, I will end this video, and thank you for watching. If you found this to be useful, then please consider liking the video and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I will meet you in the next one. Bye.